Like, I don't care too much about fame. You know, I'm not like, it's not like I need people like taking pictures with me or things like this, but I care a lot about people respecting me. Like,
Why?
that's the big question, right? And I think that has a lot to do with just the social setting, you know, I've always been in, and like my whole life, how I grew up, like all the experiences I made, basically all that condensed into like super high expectations.
Welcome back, everyone, to the School of Greatness podcast. We have Fedor Holz in the house. Good to see you, man.
Hey, buddy.
Very excited that you're here. You are one of the top ranked live and online poker players in the world. You just won a big tournament, a high roller tournament. What was it, $50,000 buy-in? Is that right?
Yes, I didn't win, but
you got top 3 or top 4, right?
Yes, yeah.
In Vegas, and you've been, you know, competing in tournaments for how long now?
So I started playing 6-7 years ago, roughly.
Uh-huh.
But these tournaments, like you just referred to, probably like about 2-3 years.
2-3 years in the
like
high
3
roller,
years
high
in the high roller scene.
Yeah. And that's what's a high roller? Is that a 20,000 plus buy-in? What does that include?
Yeah, roughly, I would say. Sorry. Yeah, I think you would say probably 25 and higher is like the high roller.
What's the highest buy-in that you've played in?
500,000.
500,000
buy-in, yeah.
How many people were in that? Like 20?
No, actually that was a bigger one. I think it was 40 or 50,
people.
Something like that. 40,
Half a million buy-in.
Yeah, it was a big thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's getting bigger and bigger. Like I think they'll get $1 million again this year, probably. I mean next year, but there's gonna be, like, this is just getting bigger and bigger.
Wow, $500,000. How did you do in that tournament?
Not well.
You lost it all?
Yes, I did.
Lost it all.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you essentially, you know, you're not, obviously you have a little more control, but essentially you roll the dice and you hope that you land on black and win some money back? How do you feel when $500,000 just is emptied from your bank account in a moment is gone?
I think there's 2 things to mention there. The first thing is, like, you don't put up $500,000 yourself. So that's like in this scene, you know, like.
So it's not all your money.
Exactly. You know, it's kind of like you're pooling money in some way.
It's like you're getting investors.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's basically you're selling action of yourself, and then other people invest in you.
That's smart.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's just, you know, even if you have like a really healthy bankroll, $500,000 is a lot of money to put up.
So how much of your own money did you put into that?
That was, I think, 2015. Back then, I maybe put up like 25 or 30K.
That's it.
My own money. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's it. Back at that time, like, I think I was I was putting up a little too much, actually.
Yeah.
But
that's before you were making all the big money.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was. It's just like, as a poker player, we generally, like, we take this, or I took this really serious of like bankroll management. Basically, not, you know, like, yes, you could fire like 100K or 200K in this tournament, but I wasn't, you know, it's not about hitting that one bank, because I knew, like, I'm a good winning player. I just steadily, you know, if it's not this one, then it's the next one.
Yeah, of course. How does it feel when it's someone else's money compared to your money? Is there a different type of pressure or at stakeness? Or are you kind of like, if I lose it, whatever, you know?
I think that's why it's really important to have very professional investors. Yeah. Like, the people that buy my action, they're
not emotionally attached, probably. So
yes,
they're not like, you gotta get my money back.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's really the thing. It's generally, like, the thing I experience is that's what poker players are really, really good at, is like detach themselves from the money loss or like the emotion. Like, it's just, you know, you buy in, and it's not money anymore. It's not like 50K, 500K is like one buy-in. Right, so I put in one buy-in, whether it's $5 or $500, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Because I play one tournament, and if I win it, I win, you know, 20 times my buy-in, and that's it. You know, it doesn't. So, like, you should play the same, and then that's the thing where people play completely different because, oh, you know, it's like a huge tournament, it's bigger, but you shouldn't. And I think that's where you can really see the difference between very professional players.
Do you think people should play the same in their life, no matter what the stakes are, whether it be you're a speaker and you're speaking in front of 5 people as opposed to 50,000 people? Is it possible to play the same in that regard too? Or a business meeting in front of, pitching something to your team versus pitching something to try to bring in business?
I mean, what changes, right? Like
stakes.
Yeah, but the thing, like, what changes from your perspective? You have the same story to tell, right? Why should you put less effort into convincing your teammates, right? Like, it's as important. Like, you're spending the time, so give your best. So I think that's a kind of the kind of idea is when you decide to do it properly.
Yeah, no matter what.
Yeah.
When did you start to train your mind to disconnect from the emotion of the money or of the stakes or of the size? When did that start to come in?
I think...
or did you always have it?
No. I think that's also something like... with all these things, it's never like you have it or you don't. And even right now, just because I've like over really like hundreds of hours, because in the beginning, I was, maybe I was a little better than average, but it's not like, oh, I'm this Zen guy, like nothing can faze me. It's more like I had these moments too, there were moments where I was just like, I just lost 20 days in a row and I lost like 50% of my bankroll. I'm like, God, like obviously in the beginning, you
20 days in a row you lost.
Yeah, it's just like, that's a very, very normal thing. You play too high stakes, you get tilted, like that's a huge thing. You're like, oh, like I can beat this guy, like, and things. And then, I mean, I went broke like a couple of times in the beginning, you have $1,000 or $5,000 and it's like you spin it up and then you break again because you're not such a great player.
Yeah.
And you think you can compete on higher levels than you actually can. And then that's, I think that's the point where you realize, oh, like you have to be disciplined. You have to really like know where you're at. You have to know how good you are. You have to know how good the other players are. And I think that's what you've been referring to is really this step. There's never enough of it. This is like an endless process. Right now, there's probably a lot less things that, really get me tilted or like, I'm like, this really sucks, but there's still things. So like I'm constantly, and I actually created this routine around it. So it was like, okay, when I grinded a lot online and back then I was really playing, all the time.
Well, like 10 hours a day online or?
When I played, probably like that. Yeah, like 10 hours a day. And then I really feel like I spend time with poker 80 hours a week probably. Like talking.
Dreaming. Yeah, everything about it.
Minimum, that's the thing. Like when I slept, like my roommates told me I was talking about hands, and
all in. Yeah.
Basically.
Oh my God, where am I? Where am I?
What
happened?
And then it's and also just setting changes like this, right? Like you attract the people that have a similar mindset, and I think that's also where I've like generally where I'm good at is like attracting people because I'm curious about, what do you have to say? Do you have, what's your opinion? How can you say? I built this network of like interested people in poker. And then the whole topic is always poker, And it's kind of weird looking back at it now because it's like you didn't do much else than like, and then I like traveling and like I liked sports, but it was more like when you were in this, that's all that mattered.
You guys were obsessed.
Yeah.
And what got you into poker in the first place? What was the curious moment?
I think in the beginning it was just...
Did you were like 16 or 17 when you started?
Yeah. So 16, 17, about that. And in the beginning it was just a home game with my friends. And like in school, all my friends were like 2-3 years older than me. And so we started this game and they're like, I was constantly losing money. I was like, 2 euros.
Yeah.
And so I was okay, this is enough. Like... And so two of my really close friends, they made money with it. So they were playing online. They were like 19 or 20, 21.
Making a few $1,000s a month or something. Or
exactly.
Whatever. Yeah.
And I was like, back then it was like, you're a student. It's like, you're a baller. You're like, oh, laptop here. It's like drinks on me.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow, this is pretty awesome. So I was like, I started playing with them. And I would actually say I wasn't a good player in the beginning. Like from most of the things. Like I was... Generally, I would say I'm smart about games, but like the whole package around it of like the discipline and really like taking it serious and grinding it out, they were way better at that. They were like, reliable kind of. And I was more like...
They're consistent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wasn't a consistent person at that time, actually. And then...
In life, you mean in general?
Yes, very general. It was more like there was one thing that really hooked me, and I like dove super deep into it, and then at some point I was just like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like I don't know.
Something else, some shiny object.
Exactly.
Yeah. And were you a gamer before? Like
Yeah, I
video games, card games,
Everything.
board games.
yes, everything that challenged my mind, I always loved it. Like
Yeah.
played a lot of video games, played chess. I played tons of games. Everything that was like, oh, like I wanna.
Yes. Okay. Cool. And when did you start to see like, oh, actually, I'm not that bad?
I think that started about when I turned 18.
18. So a
So it
couple
was
years
like,
later.
yeah, like 2 years later, I was like, okay, like I got in touch with the community. You know, you started being in forums and
Yes.
like chatting. Like, you know, Skype was the thing back then, so you're chatting with all these people, and
Reading a lot of
that's-
books as well, or just
actually,
on poker?
I've read half of a book
Yeah.
about poker. It's like and that's the thing in poker. I think the game progresses so fast.
Yeah, everything changes.
It's like a book. There's a couple books right now. I'd say maybe 2-3 books that have really good fundamentals, but way better to talk to people because
course.
then you get like the
And play and experience it and get feedback right away, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So you started to realize when you're 18 that it started to work a little bit. Were you just making a little money, or was it mostly online then, or was it?
I mean, I
all your
started-
friends were broke because you were taking all their money. Or what?
No, actually not at all. I would still say I was pretty on the lower end at that point. I was like having some success, but still like having these kind of like outbursts with like, you know, like, oh, what am I doing this for? Because at that time I finished school with 17 and then started studying and played at the same time kind of. And I was like,
Studying in university? Or,
yes, university. And so it was like in school, I really, I wasn't, let's say I wasn't the best student, like really skipping a lot of classes and sleeping and all that stuff. And somehow because teachers liked me, kind of like I got through it.
Sure.
And then started studying and all my family was like, you know, you got to kind of start taking things serious now. I was like, okay, like this is what I'm going to do now. And I was really like, okay, I'm going to force myself now. I'm going to do this. And so it's kind of like, what did I study? I think you call it like computer science. And God, it was like, it drained, like after 4 months, I was like, I couldn't, you know, nothing worked anymore. I was doing this for like 50, 60 hours a week. It was really very competitive, very hard study actually. And then I was just like, I got ill for 1 week and I was just, okay, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, no socializing, not much socializing. I was just like, oh, weekends, you gotta, you know, work or like learn some. And like, and I just felt like, you know, I was mediocre. I was like somehow passed, was maybe like the top 10% or something. And I worked so hard and I was okay, I cannot do this.
Yeah.
If I put so much time into something and I'm not, you know,
Excited about it and growing, yeah.
yeah. And so
you decided then to go, like, I'm going to try this poker thing and see what happens, or?
to be honest, I think it was desperation. It was not like, oh, you know, now I have this other great option. It was more like, oh, I actually have no real option.
I have to figure this out no matter what.
It was like, yeah, you know, this was the other thing I was kind of doing all the time. And it was like, okay, you know, just, I would say it was more like the next best thing to spend my time on. And then I was like, okay, but at least, you know, now I got to take this serious.
Yeah.
And that's when I started, was like, okay, this is how I do it now. I start from here and I do it like solid. And did not work out well in the first year.
Really?
But the thing that worked out well was like my reputation in the community. Like a lot of people were like, oh, you know, this guy's smart. Like he talks smart about it. But like still the way I played, very inconsistent. Still, and that's the emotional part. Like
So you
also,
got emotional around things still.
yeah, it's just like you have this absurd expectation. You know, you got to be winning right now. So, you know, if it doesn't happen in like the next 5 months, you're like, that's, I feel like how our generation kind of things, or like how I thought at that time too. And I still do in a lot of situations, is like, oh, it has to happen now. You know, if it doesn't happen in the next 3 months, or like, how, you know, like it's not going to work.
failure and this and that,
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's like, instead of just being like slowly seeing the progress, setting goals, being like, okay, this is where I want to go, and changing my surrounding to get to that goal. And I think that was the thing that I realized at some point is like, okay, I have to get out of this. Like there's so many bad influences around me where I'm being distracted. Everyone's telling me like, hey, you're a failure. Like go back to university, go study, do something real.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then I set this deadline, 1st January, I'll quit everything. I left my stuff behind. I was like, okay, like I want to make, at least 5K till that point, whatever it takes. So I can like book a flight, no return, and just like see where it takes me.
Right. So you made a goal. Was that within like a month or a couple months to make 5K? Or?
It was, I think I started, and there were 2 things that happened actually. And that was like, I have this day, it was like such a weird day. It was like June or July approximately. And I've been watching like, May, June, something like that. And I've been watching a lot or reading a lot about people that just like do running and marathons and like extreme sports. And my dad does it as well. It was like, just as like, I need some kind of challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I looked at it and I read something and I watched a video and I was just like, okay, because I've never been a person that just does things. I was just like, oh, awesome idea. I've been a dreamer. It's like, oh, what a great idea. And like, we could do like this, and then you don't do it. And I was like,
you never executed and stuck with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was happening in poker too. And the reason why I stuck with it was because there was, like I was in a pretty bad spot. Like no money, like my family is kind of poor, or like, so, or like we never had much money. And then, like I basically had like a couple €100 to live with like a month. And so it was this place where I was like, okay, I have to, then I realized at some point it just clicked and I was like, okay, like I have to change something drastically. And I sat there and I was like, okay, let's just go. And I walked out in the stuff I had on and I just ran for like an hour. And then I came back. And then I did this almost literally like 6 times a week probably. Every day.
Running.
Yes. And I just went, and the only thing I had was I had to be faster than the day before. So to really feel this like, I'm progressing. I'm actually getting somewhere. I'm getting better. And I think this kind of gave me this, okay, and I was like, okay, it cleared my mind in some way. And I actually don't enjoy running, which is really weird. Like, today, there's like no way you can get me to run. It's just like, oh, why am I doing this? But back then it was really this thing of getting better at something. And I actually improved my time like a lot. And I was like, okay, I'm going to train for a marathon. And then I broke my ankle 3 weeks before. And then I never did it. But that was the point where I really felt like something was turning. And then I've got some success. I made more than 5K in that year. And then I went on a trip.
Right. You went on the trip.
I did, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. What's the biggest obstacle you've ever had to overcome?
That's a good question. I mean, it's really, there's nothing that really pops to mind. I think it's been generally more like stretches rather than like, okay, there's this one thing that I just, can't. Actually, the one thing that immediately pops to my mind is bungee jumping, because I'm super afraid of like not heights necessarily, but more like the idea of falling or jumping off somewhere. And that was the first thing I was like, I just get this feeling right now, like the goosebumps and everything.
Sure.
That took me, a lot of energy. But besides that, I think there was one moment there have been a couple moments. There's just these moments where you just feel like everything is, I don't know how like if you had this, where I was just like, why am I doing this? And it was really like for a week or two, I was like, why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing? This has been probably the biggest obstacles. I was literally questioning every single thing I was doing, and I just like I didn't know anymore. Like, what am I doing from like forward, and like what have I been doing all that time?
Yeah, I think lack of vision is one of the scariest places to be. If we don't know why we're doing what we're doing or where we're heading, then we're just kind of lost in our mind, and so many things can come up for us. Yeah.
It's just, it's mainly because I'm pretty aware of being very, like always looking for growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I love, these conversations. I love meeting new people. That's why
Right.
I'm like push myself all the time. Is like I travel too much, and like meet new people, and like I never turn down a meeting. I'm like, come by, and we meet here, and we do that, and then that also has some downsides where I just have to take some more time. But it's this question of like, when does it end? What are you doing it for? Like, yes, you grow, but like, what is the actual thing that comes out of it? And that's I think the contribution part, where like, when is the time where you really feel like you're giving something back? And I think that's the part that I question a lot, is like, you push that back. It's like, I'm gonna grow and I give back a little bit here and there. It's like I talk to people as well, but then is it why am I not doing it? Like all the time or way more? Because that's because that other thing feels selfish, and that might actually have some positive impact.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're contributing back to the best of your abilities?
No, I don't think so.
What could you be doing to give back more?
I think that is the question. Like, it feels like I could be doing more. But I also feel like it has to be in the right way for it to be, because I also think I just didn't find the right way yet. I just didn't find something where I can combine both things so that I can keep doing it for a longer time. It's more like, okay, I could do something now for like a month or two or some time, but I never found a spot where it's like, okay, this is, and maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just not pushing myself hard enough. Maybe I should push myself more into these situations of really like spending time with people. And yeah, I think that's a good question.
Something to think about. When so much is at stake, how do you keep yourself grounded?
I think it's the way I set up my brain. It's really like the way I think about decisions and feelings is I spend a lot of time on this. I think this is probably the thing I spent the most time on, in that regard, is really dissecting what are the different parts of a decision, and what are the different parts of that outcome, and what makes me feel that way, and why did it happen like that. So
walk me through the process.
So you're referring to, for example, now, right, like losing money, or like losing a lot of money. And I think that the big issue people have with this is when they didn't make a conscious decision. When it's like, you basically make a decision based on 80%, this kind of emotional like outburst is like, okay, let's gamble, or let's do this. And then you're like, oh, later the rationality kicks in, and then it's like they now have a different decision-making process, basically, and they're like, oh, why did I do this?
Yeah.
And I think having this same process in basically like very consistent in all different areas, and then being able to reflect on it. So it's like, why did I make that decision, right? Like, why did I make that decision to put up that amount of money? Do I feel good with that decision, right? So now it's like, okay, I put up 50K, 100K for a tournament, and now I feel bad afterwards about losing it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, why is that? Right? Why do I feel bad? Because I made that decision. Do I think that was a good decision? If I think it was a good decision, then I shouldn't feel bad, right? Because the outcome doesn't matter. It's just basically this, we feel bad if we lose, and we feel good if we win, whereas the only thing that should matter is, do you feel good about the decision? Right? Because that's how it's going to be with everything. It's not like you're never going to make decisions where it's going to be 100% right. I'm not, if that's how you want to make decisions, you're doing something wrong. And that's risk. It's just every decision you take has some risk of downside.
Yeah.
Even if it's one of the best decisions you made, it might turn into something bad because you just cannot see all the parts of it.
Yeah. I see when, I've had Maria Sharapova on a few times. She's one of the best tennis players in the world. And I see when she plays at the end of a point, whether she scores or she loses the point, she kind of does the same motion. It's like you reconnecting herself. She doesn't like celebrate in a big way, and she doesn't get down on herself no matter what. It's kind of consistent. And I think a lot of the greatest tennis players do this. They're very consistent in their reaction towards the decisions or the actions that they made. Do you think about that as well when you go all in on something and then you lose? Are you more of a, what was I thinking, or is it all neutral for you? Your responses are just, I won a lot of money, neutral. I lost it all, neutral. And do you think that's how people should be living their lives?
That's a very complex question, I think, and maybe two questions, but that's also a reason why I'm getting out of poker. Like, because I think it just develops you into a certain direction of exactly this. Everything is neutral. Whereas, like, I feel like...
Because if you're a roller coaster, it's very hard to manage.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's also one of the biggest strengths of very good players is that they're just super consistent.
No matter what. Win, maybe a little smirk. Lose.
Very different from player to player.
Yeah.
But I think that was mainly, like, because I spent so much time on it. It's really like this, you shouldn't be too happy when you win, which is such a weird thing, right? Like, don't be happy.
Because you can lose.
Don't be sad. Be a robot, basically.
Yeah.
But this is what it leads to, is like everything is just neutral, whatever. And then you actually realize, when everything is neutral, poker is not really, such a cool thing anymore. Because the thing that
it's a lot of long hours. It's a lot of long days. Yeah.
So it's like the thing then it gets like minimized to is financial interest and some kind of mental competition, right? And then I was like, okay, if everything else goes away, if it's not about that thrill of like losing money, winning money, is like that excitement,
that rush, yeah.
That was just all irrational. It's all this kind of thing that we're looking for, we're just chasing. It's just like we all want this. And when you train hundreds of hours of like getting rid of this by like this routine, injecting logic, is like this doesn't make sense. This is how I want it to be. Worst players have to win because that's what brings money into the game. Focus on making good decisions. Then you realize, actually that game, loses a lot of its magic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say are the key elements of some of the top players in the world? What do they have? And what have they removed?
I think that's the thing. That's what I actually like about poker a lot. I think it's a really good training camp because it trains so many different areas. It's not only playing a card game. Mm-hmm. That's where I think it is very different to something like chess. Because you miss out on all these other aspects around it. Like in poker, it's a lot about networking. It's a lot about, a lot more about money management, which is like, there's very few areas that are like this. Mm-hmm. And you have to run your own business. Like there's no one that really takes care of you. There's no like, you do you. You're your own kind of entity. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of money involved in like a wild west kind of setting. There's no contracts. There's like nobody. Like people. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in the scene. So I think that's teaching you a lot of things in like a street smart kind of way. Mm-hmm. It's like you just see very quickly what people's intentions are. You see what they want. It's like that's what you do all day. Yeah. Nothing but like, what is he trying to get from me?
Of course.
Basically.
Yeah. And how do you coach yourself when you lose? How do you train yourself to be able to come back and kind of have a short-term memory, I guess, so you can come back and focus on being confident and having a powerful mindset in the next hand or next tournament?
Mm-hmm. I think it's all about like what kind of decision you made and not about the outcome. So again, it's like, am I happy with my decision? Then it doesn't matter.
What if you're not happy with the decision?
That's the issue. Is like, then you're like, okay, that's actually the thing now that becomes more complicated, is like that process is a little longer. It's like, okay, I'm generally a person, I don't like to make mistakes twice, right? So I'm like, because I think that we made so many experiences in our life, if we would utilize them, by actually extracting the value. And I think we intentionally forget a lot of things. We unconsciously forget a lot of things. And there's so many things we've done already. We know already. And we make this mistake. Sometimes we make them 5, 6, 7 times without even realizing, oh, this is actually something I can easily change. Mm-hmm. And so in this case, it's also okay. Like I made something that makes me feel bad. I did something, and like, why is that? Right? Like, why do I feel bad about? And so I'm like, just going on this research now is like, what happened, right? So basically going to the lab. It's like checking out like what's the best play, talk to other players, and then fix this and set that frame right so I will not make the same mistake again.
Yeah. Do you think anyone can perform at the highest level at their craft? Or does it only work for certain types of people?
I think we're all very at the beginning. And that's why I think everyone can, relatively speaking. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I think, there's some people that are better than others and some that are like have it easier than others, but I think relatively everyone can be excelling at this because I think very few people invest a lot of time in it.
Mm-hmm. How do we train our minds to be able to perform at high levels?
I think visualization is extremely important. Generally, I believe that having this, I think it's like it's a process that happens in your mind is you do something and you connect a habit with it. Mm-hmm. So whenever you do something that you want to train, you're like, okay, now I have this process that I preset that happens right after. So it's like, I have a habit that I don't like, so I put this process right after. So it's like, oh, I was tilting a lot, right? So whenever a certain situation happened, a bad player won against me, I was like, oh, this made me angry, right? So I don't want this emotion there. So I decided for myself, I don't want this there.
So how did you get rid of it?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, it doesn't happen overnight, right? So, but every single time it happens, I'm like, okay, I write it down, right? So it's like, every time I feel the feeling, I write it down, and then I write down why it shouldn't be there. So I was like, I shouldn't feel bad about this because that's the exact reason why I make money. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the only reason why this game even exists, is the luck factor. Right? And so actually that turns now, if you do this 150 times, now it turns into you smiling because you realize, oh wow, this is awesome, because without that, like, there would be nothing.
Yeah. And you've done that to other players where you're like, got something and
exactly.
You're like, oh,
right.
Awesome.
So then there's a lot of things, like I did a lot of different things. Is like, for example, every single time I do like the same thing to someone else, I write it down too. Mm-hmm. I think generally focusing on positivity is also is so awesome to turn around these things.
Yeah.
Just in general, broaden perspective and switch where I feel like you have this really stuck perspective. Just try to find a different angle. Mm-hmm. About all the things that made me feel bad. So that's my approach.
Gotcha. What do you think about most of your time?
That's a good question and very hard. Like, I can say it broadly is more like, I feel like I like to play puzzles. I think this is generally how it, like, kind of directing things. Like, I'm never the person that is really like hands-on, like executing, like making it perfect. It's more like I just lean back and I'm like, like put the pieces together, the right people. I think I'm very good at grasping 80-90% of something and not good at the last 5-10%. Mm-hmm. But that's why it has to be big, because then a lot of 80%, a lot of different things, that's where, the skill comes in.
Yeah.
Because most of the people are, like a lot of people are like 95 at something, and then they're like not so good at seeing other things and like connecting the different areas. So the bigger the project is, or the bigger the challenge is, and that's also, I think, why poker is a great area, is because I'm actually not like, I think the game itself, I wouldn't be like a world-class player. I'd be good, but I wouldn't be, the top. But it's more the combination of everything, of like connecting the right people. Mm-hmm. Like, I had outstanding people around me. Mm-hmm. They all we literally started all on the bottom, 6 of us, all playing like probably top 30 in the world right now. So it's like,
that's cool.
Yeah, and I think, that's where I can soak up information.
Yeah. Wow. And what do you dream about a lot?
That's a funny background story. I was dreaming a lot when I was a child. Very, very vividly. I had a couple lucid dreams as well, which I only figured out afterwards because I had, I don't know exactly how do you call it, but I woke up once in a lucid dream. So it's like you wake up but you can't move. Mm-hmm. And I've like my mom brought me to the hospital. Like they came over and like then that's.
So you woke up in the dream, but you felt paralyzed.
Yes, because your body still sleeps.
When your eyes were open or your eyes were shut?
My eyes were open, and I could like hawk like this.
Dude, I have had that multiple times.
Yeah.
Where my eyes were shut, but I was awake, but I was paralyzed.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was screaming.
Yes.
But nothing was coming out.
Yes.
And I've done this a few times, and then somehow I like scream so much in my lucid dream that I like wake my body up, and then I finally like let it out. But I feel like it takes forever. It's crazy, man.
The thing is, I cannot remember the feeling. It's more like this. It's like as if I watched myself.
It's scary.
How it happened.
It's like paralysis. I almost feel like.
My mom freaked out. It was literally like you cannot do anything. You just see someone freaking out completely. It's like move.
Wow, dude. Yeah, I didn't know other people had that. I've never shared that because I'm always like, what is this? I don't know. It only happens once in a while, but yeah.
And that's the part is like I had this, and then like I've been bullied in school, and it was like I had a really bad time around that time because I skipped a class, and I was like maybe 11 or 12, and everyone was like 14, and that's like a gap where I feel like just two different interests.
Yeah.
And
did you skip classes or something, or did you skip grades or?
I skipped one grade.
Got it.
And I got into school I think 1 year early.
Got it. So you were 11 or 12 when they were 13, 14.
Yes. So, and I think that was a gap. I was also physically a little weaker. And then it was like just the thing of, I think, just, not when you're the one. And I think that was the turning point, actually, where I was like, okay, I cannot be smart anymore. You just don't want to say things anymore because, like, you just... So... Yeah, at that time, and that's when these turned into nightmares, and that was like, and that's also where the fear of falling comes from, because I've like had a lot of these dreams where I was falling, like it was always the same. It was chasing and that's the crazy part about it is like, now retrospectively, now that I had normal dreams, I could change the world. Like I could literally I could always change the setting. I could change different things, but it was always a chase. There was always something running behind me, basically, like whether it's people or animals or whatever. And then the last part was always falling somewhere, like off a cliff or a house, whatever. And when I crash on the floor, I wake up.
Yeah.
And I had this feeling, and that feeling of hitting the ground, and it's just like, it just goes through your body, and you're like straight awake. And that was over like weeks and weeks, and I like cried myself to sleep. I was like couldn't sleep without light anymore. I was like I didn't want to go to sleep anymore. And then at some point I felt like my body reacted to this, where it was like I just didn't dream anymore. It was like this one point like everything changed. I was like I fell asleep in like 10 seconds. I slept for 9 hours like a rock. You couldn't wake me up. I did not dream. I did not move. I just slept 9 hours, and then I woke up and I was like always like tired, really really tired after I woke up too, and I felt like something just changed in my it just blocked it out. So that was an interesting phase, and that's also where my performance really went down. It's like really? I couldn't no passion about things anymore. I was not like, as a child, I was really like excited about everything and like very quick at learning things. And then it was just like, no, I don't want to do anything anymore.
How connected to achieving results is visualization and dreaming then? Since you weren't dreaming in those moments or being able to visualize in your sleep, do you feel like that was...
I think it's a huge part.
Really?
I mean, just just now that I can feel that it's getting back, it's coming back. Like I sleep better, and I'm actually sometimes have dreams again, and it's like because I also think about this a lot, and like I try to figure out where like what happened.
Yeah. And do you feel like you're running towards something or running away from something?
I think both. I think I'm not at the point where I can say, it's only running towards something. I think it's running towards some things and running away from some things.
What are you running away from?
I think the main thing is probably how people perceive me. Like, I think that's both. Like, some things I tackle and some other things I don't. And I think it's these two things where it's like, one is respect and one is fame. Whereas I feel like I like now get better at not, like, I don't care too much about fame. I'm not like, it's not like I need people like taking pictures with me or things like this, but I care a lot about people respecting me. Like,
why?
That's the big question, right? And I think that has a lot to do with just the social setting, I've always been in, and like my whole life, how I grew up, like all the experiences I made, basically all that condensed into like super high expectations through like, just being a smart kid, and everyone, my whole family is, and the worst thing I ever did was taking an IQ test. Like, that was literally that moment that happened for me as a child. I was just like another day basically, and I had to take one because of the new school, and then everyone was like, oh my god, like he has to do this, and then expectations just went like through the roof, and I was like,
how'd you score on your IQ
test? I think I did 2 or 3, and it was like somewhere, I'm not 100% actually anymore. I think somewhere 145, a little under 150, something like this. And it was just like, then they have this like, oh, you're blah smart, and it was suddenly, and I actually think I was just very good at the games,
the puzzle, the test.
Yes, it was a test. It's not like asking too many different. It was all kind of the same thing. It was like, this is not really such a broad spectrum. It was like all very kind of logic games rather than anything else. It was like, okay, this is I'm good at, but I'm not good at a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that. And then it was like, from that point on, there was no winning anymore. So that's why I was like, okay, whatever you do, you can be really good. It's like, oh yeah, expected. You're like, you're not so good. It's like, what are you doing? Like, and then I was just, okay, at some point it's pointless. And I think that's where this comes from. Is like, I put this to myself too. As like, whatever I do, it's like, you have to be better. There's no, and I think that's where the growth part comes in too. It's like both good and bad, right? Like, I do it sometimes for the wrong reasons.
What if the people you want to respect you never do?
I don't know. I think it's a learning process. I think I'm getting better at it. It's more, I think it's mainly what I need is to spend time with myself. Is really figuring out, why do I need that, right? Because in the end, it's you and yourself. Because everything you project, like everything's like, oh, how do others perceive me, is only something that happens in your mind.
Yeah.
So if they don't respect me, what for? Why not? What did I, like, if I can respect like, it's all just information that you can process and make something out of it.
Yeah.
So
walk me through a hand. Walk me through a hand. When you get 2 cards sent your way, what's the process like for you in that moment?
Okay.
Do you have a routine? Do you have the same thing you do every time? What do you think about? Are you assessing the room? Are you listening to other people around you? Are you looking in their eyes? Are you looking down? What's the process?
Okay, let me try to break it down. So, because I've been thinking about this recently, and I gave coaching, so like I had to break it down before.
Yes.
So, in a general way, is like, I get 2 cards, right? So the first thing I think about is, ooh,
2 cards.
Okay, just not 2 jokers though.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of sticky. 2 cards. Here we go.
Okay.
You have 2 cards. Then what?
So the first thing is like the setting of the game, right? Like this I know at this point is like, who am I playing with, right? Like how many players are we? What kind of game are we playing,
Yes.
right? So most of the time it's going to be some tournament setting. There's going to be blinds in the game, right? So it's like a small blind and a big blind. And I get 2 cards. It's like, okay, what position am I in, right? So let's say we're 6 players and now there's like a lot of things happen that aren't really conscious decisions anymore. It's just like that happens like this, right? So now there's 6 players and I'm thinking, okay, like I'm first to act, for example, right? So I know, okay, roughly first to act, I would probably play about 18% of my hands, or like between 15 and 22, depending on like what the blinds are, how many in, like how much is in the pot, basically.
If you're first to act, you'll play about 20%.
So roughly, right? Like something like this. And then now there's basically you have this baseline, right? Like that's roughly, and then there's all these different informations that come in with every decision, right? So it's like, okay, what players are on the table, right? Are they more aggressive or are they more passive? So that's right. So I have this baseline now, and it's like more aggressive, I play a little tighter, so I open less hands. If they're more passive, I play more hands. Like the more passive there are, the more hands I play.
Right. You might play
so
25, 30%. Yeah.
Exactly. So every information, the weight of that information is changing the way I play, right? And the more confident I am in that information, the more I will adjust my play. So that's the 2 things now. What I'm talking about is one is the basic strategy, and the other thing is adaptation. Mm-hmm. So, which is basically reads and information about how players play.
Right.
And so, then also a lot of other things like the tournament setting, for example, right? Are we 6 players left? And there's like, what are the payouts and so on, right? Are we 200 players left? So that also changes the situation. But now, then I'm like, okay, I have this baseline in my head, and I'm like, okay, I look down at my hand. I'm like, okay, a nice hand. So it's in this range.
Yes.
And then I open raise this hand.
What if it's not a nice hand?
Then I fold.
Fold it.
Yeah. Right. So that's the two things.
It's a nice hand.
If it's in that range, and that's the thing where it's like that inconsistency, right? So there's going to be players that 2 things. One thing is they don't know the basic strategy well enough, and the other thing is they don't adapt well. Mm-hmm. Right? These are the 2 main things where you can go wrong. It's like, for example, they think you should be open raising 10%, or they think you should be open raising 30%, and then like they make a mistake straight away. Mm-hmm. And if they adjust based on that, then they make an even bigger mistake.
Yeah, and they try to make up for it. Yeah,
basically. Yeah. So this is what happens, and then like basically this process happens over and over again on every single decision. So it's like next, someone calls me, for example, and then so let's say the big blind. So it's like fold, and the big blind calls. So
it's you 2.
Heads up, right? So 2 players in a pot. So you have 2 cards now.
Yes.
Right?
A couple aces. Yeah.
So
there we go. 2 cards. These are like sticky for some reason.
And so now you get 2 cards, and then you call, for example, and then there comes a board, like 3 cards, right? So now it's again, right? You will do something, then I think about what do I want to do now that I have these, let's say 20% of hands left, right?
Yeah.
Now that I have these 20% of hands left, how do I want to play these, right? How much of these 20% do I want to check? How much do I want to bet? And then that's my basic strategy again. And then I look at you, I'm like, do I know anything about this guy? And I'm like,
what if you don't know anything about him or her?
If I don't know anything about it, I stick to my basic strategy.
Got it.
But there's always something, Like this is the awesome part about it is non-information is also information, right? And there's so much information. If I don't know you, that means you can't be good. Right? Because
you study the game, because
I know everyone that is good.
Who's on the top 100 list, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, it is extremely unlikely, just given by that it's kind of the counter equity, of like a probability is like, if I know the top 500 players in the world, it's very, very, very unlikely that you're a very good player. Mm-hmm. So now that's the first thing, right? The next thing is I look at you and I'm like, okay, like what kind of country are you from? What kind of population are you gonna be like? What age range are you? Like, what's your background? You know, what's the value of like materialistic, like what kind of watch do you wear? Like things like this. Who did you talk to before? How do you like look at your cards? Is it more a professional? Like, have you played before? Can I see that you actually know what you're doing? How do you stack your chips? It's all these little things that add up to like, on a scale of like non-professional to professional, I can guess, you know, it's the same way you can guess, oh, you're 28, you know, or 33. It's like you just, because you have, why can you say that is because you look at eyes, eyebrows, mouth, nose, face, wrinkles, and so on, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. I can guess, oh, like, you've seen a lot of people that are 30, 31, 32 before, and you match.
Right.
So I've seen hundreds, thousands of people, you know, play poker, and I've seen so many different ways of playing, so I match. It's like, where does he match? And so then I'm like, oh, he's probably an amateur. So how do I play against an amateur? I'm probably more likely to bet.
Right.
So,
and then based on the next few cards, you assess where you're at. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's basically, that's always in my head, that's always the decision making. I have like a visualization of my basic strategy. So I have, right, when I think about the 20%, I have like a visualization of it. It's not like I think, like I write down 20% in my head. It's more like a square, and then I take like 20% square of that.
Sure.
And then that's that left, and so on. Yeah.
Do you like to look people in the eyes when you're competing against them? Or?
Most of the time, yeah. I think tells is a pretty big thing in poker.
Tells.
Yeah. There's so many little nuances. Like, I make a lot of decisions. There's a lot of very close decisions. And I think that I can gain an edge by trusting my instinct, because people are generally not good at deceiving. It's just humans. Humans in general are not good at deceiving.
Do you feel like you are? Or how do you misdirect your competition?
I also, like, I'm on the lookout for it, but there's two things. First of all, people don't look too much at me. I think that's the first thing.
They don't look at
because
you. They look down or like, yeah.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people feel like they don't, like, they rather try to not give something away rather than to look at me, which is also a reason why I look at them, because it gives me this, like, I can be more free, you know, like I don't have to look too much at what I do if I know
right.
They don't look.
Yeah. What's the big tell of someone else when you know?
Okay, let me go through the list. There's tons of stuff.
How do you know when someone... Because sometimes they can be like swallowing their throat because they've got a big hand, or like, how do you know it's?
And again, it's all
that they have.
I call it like, I think it's dumb to say this is this.
Right.
Like, it's generally, it's the same. It's never like this in life.
Yeah.
You know, it's never like, oh, when he looks at you like this, that is always this.
Right. Because fear and excitement is the same emotion, so it's kind of like,
you know, that there's certain people, like, yes, most people look like this, right? When it's most people that cry, probably cry because because, you know, like, it's most likely someone died. It's mostly, you know, but it's not always like this. Could also be because of joy.
Right.
But it's less likely. People cry way more often because of sad things than because of happy things.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it's always sad. So I would say, yes, if you give me 1-to-1 on it being sad, I take it. You know? So it's like this kind of thing where it's just probabilistics. And then the thing how I go about it is, how confident am I? And the more confident I am, the more I adjust. So, for example, if I play against an amateur, I'm way more confident in my reads. And I adjust heavily. Like, I do really crazy things because I'm just like, I don't care what hand I have, because I know, you know, what you're playing have.
Yeah.
So the more confident I am, the more, like, I just completely go away from my basic strategy, the more the adaptation happens. So it's like, when an amateur is like, let me go through the list. So it's like, throat is really big, like gulping. Generally, one big thing is also force looking. Like, if people are fixing one point, like amateurs specifically,
because they don't want to look and give anything away. So it's like,
the harder they try to not give anything away, more likely it is they don't have, like, they're bluffing.
Gotcha.
Because it's really like they're like this. Okay. It's actually biologically as well. It's like this kind of dead, like playing dead.
Oh.
Um.
So if you're more relaxed and you're looking around and you're comfortable to look someone in the eyes,
Yes.
then you might more likely to have something.
Drinking is probably one of the strongest reads ever.
Really?
If people drink, like they have it a lot of times. Yeah.
They have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's just one of the most relaxed things you
You're
can
like,
do.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Relaxed.
Yeah. You know, it's just.
Yeah. So you take a drink like every hand. You're like.
It's a good strategy.
Yeah. Right. You never know.
if you're bluffing a lot.
Yeah.
Then what else is there? Like generally, pulse is a huge thing. Like pulse is crazy.
Pulse?
Like pulse, yeah. Like
yeah. You can see the pulse.
Oh yeah, you can like.
It's like.
And that's the thing where it's like I do that a lot in like tournaments where there's no time restriction, so you can wait a long time.
Yeah.
Like on the river, mostly in big decisions. So not in like small, but like in big decisions. I put them in an uncomfortable situation by like staring at them or making it really obvious, like that I have like playing with chips and like or saying something like, oh, I have a really good hand or something.
And seeing.
And then the thing, I just wait. Because mostly people relax slightly when they know that they cannot lose.
When they got something, they're like.
Yeah. Because, you know, like.
Whatever you have.
Your pulse is just naturally decreasing. You're excited. Like, that's the thing, as you said before, like fear and excitement are really similar in the beginning, but they don't stay the same.
Yeah.
Because fear is stays longer than excitement.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pulse is generally staying up staying high when they're bluffing. And then it goes, like, it relaxes somewhat. So you can see muscle tension, right? So when they like tense and then when they loosen up, you can, okay. Like, this is also something. Yeah. So, hands is a big thing. I a lot of players have something with their hands. Is like
something or there.
No, actually, the sweat on fingers, nose as well, but also like the color of the hands. That's like a thing that I've seen with a lot of players. Is like
really,
and then timing, like here, especially here, a lot of people that have thin skin.
Yeah.
You can see that they get like a little
like red or something or what? Really?
Yeah, like these like
patches or something. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very, very slightly. But I've seen that a lot of times. Huh. And
then they don't have it then. Usually.
It's more that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have it. It just means something. And that happens, like, it's just good to know that, you know, there's something's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, that like it rarely means that they are not interested. So some kind of interest.
Yes.
So you can adjust already based on that.
Yeah.
And then, I think I mentioned a couple of things.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
What would you say is a couple questions left for you? What would you say? Did I win the hand?
You did. You made a flush, no?
I had an ace. Yeah. What would you say is? What has poker taught you about relationships?
That's a good question. I think the one thing I learned the one thing at least that I took out for myself is I want mutually beneficial relationships because I think that's the only way for it to be long lasting relationships. Yeah. And I'm really focusing now on what does it give me? What can I give? Mm-hmm. And it taught me that I don't want to be too forced in, like, you know, we're friends for 5 years. Like now we have to, like, the 6th year has to be as good as, and it's just like, be free with people. Like, you know, things just change. Mm-hmm. And you shared the same, 95% of the same interests, and now you don't.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. And then another thing is I don't want to be involved too heavily in business with friends.
Really?
It's just, there's like, I have a couple of really, really good friends in poker. And there's always this, like, we will never cross that line of 95% because there's always like competition and business involved. Mm-hmm. You know, we deal with money, with each other, and we sometimes have to negotiate basically. I just don't want it.
Yeah.
It's like, I rather would be like, no, I'm like, we don't do this. yes, it would make us both money, but I prefer to.
Yeah, of course.
And that's a tough thing in that regard. But yeah, this I'm happy to not. I'm happy like actually getting out of poker now to like.
So you're retiring soon, or you're going to be out of it, or
out of a lot of things in terms of the very professional part. You know, it's not like I don't see myself as being a professional right now. When I play, I compete and on the best level I can, but I don't, you know, I play maybe 5 to 10% of what I used to play. So I see it as like low key activity.
Got it. This is called the 3 truths. I asked this question at the end for everyone. So you're pretty young. You're 24 right now, right? Let's imagine you have a very long life and you achieve everything you want.
That's probably not going to happen.
Let's just imagine.
Okay,
let's just imagine that you accomplish anything you want. You have amazing relationships. You travel everywhere. You launch businesses. And it's the last day for you.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, everything you've created has been erased. All the videos you put out there, the apps, the mindset training, everything you've done is gone. The business is gone. But you have a piece of paper and a pen to write down 3 things you know to be true about all of your experiences. And this would be the only thing that people would have to be remembered of you by, or these 3 lessons or these 3 truths. What would you say are yours?
I think the first thing I would say is that you should not get stuck. Like, don't get stuck in something because you think that's what you should do. Like, follow the things that you feel, just what feels right. The second thing I would say is to question everything in a happy way. Like, not beat you up, but just in a curious, nice way. Like, why is it like this? You know, to like take it more like, oh, there's some way to, because everything is endless. You know, there's no end to it. There's always something new coming. And the third thing I would say is that be true, like be honest and don't pretend. Like just take care of the people around you that you feel are like respect and value the way you are, and stand up for them and stand up for yourself.
Nice. Those are great, man. And what's the main thing you're focused on now, or how can we stay connected to you? Where do we connect with you online?
Yeah, actually, like now that I kind of, you know, play a little less poker, the big thing I focus on right now is really, and we talked about this before, contributing. Like, I'm actively looking for a way to do that, and so the company I started has that. That is the long-term goal. Like, I really feel like the one big thing that has always been in my head is education. Is like, I mean, call it growth, personal growth, like whatever. It's like kind of learning something in a way where you can apply it yourself. So you don't need constantly rely on something, but like you learn something and you can use it yourself, and then you can improve it, build on it, give that person back, teach other people. So it's this like mastermind idea of constant growth. Everyone is going in his direction. Then you share, filter it, repeat. Like you grow this. This is what kind of environment I feel the most comfortable in.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to build in a company. And that's what I'm working on right now. So
what's it called?
It's called Primed. And the idea is to launch this umbrella company, which now happened, and build a team that shares that mindset and be really free about it. So like that you can do whatever you want, basically, as long as it's in that spirit, right? And like we set goals together, and it's like we decide together is like, this is the direction we want to go into. And it's like people take responsibility for their own stuff. And the only, like, it's really this really, really broad thing where in that thing, like, you know, people can thrive. That's the idea, is like really giving people space, because I think that's where we're developing into. Like I personally cannot be in an area where it's like where you're caged, and I think there's a lot of people that feel similar right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's not this opportunity, and it's growing, but I want to create that space. And so we're basically developing whatever comes to our mind. Is like, you know, we started at the beginning with, like, we launched a mindset app now called Primed Mind. And it was just, I've been working with this mindset coach, Elliot, and it was just, you know, I loved it. And it's like all my friends, everyone I recommended, he's working with a lot of world-class athletes, and it was just like, everyone loves what he does. And it was like, he only does private sessions. So I was like, let's give this to people because we can. And then we made that happen. And the next thing was like, oh, we're excited, you know, about children education. So we worked together on this new app. It's about, because every children educational app on the market is crap. It's just like, it's only about making money. Gamify it as much as you can, but don't care about that didactic or like what that you teach them. Like, there's the best one is half in German. It was like, how should they learn English? But so things like this, and it's like, okay, we see something and we're like passionate about something. It's just like, you know, let's just see if, you know, if we can change something. This is like the basic idea, is to build that framework for people to like do whatever they think has the most impact.
Yeah. Nice, man. What's the website for that? Where can learn more?
So the website, actually we're launching our website we've been working a lot on this. We want it to be like, really, like, we've been playing around so much with it. It's primedgroup.com. You'll see, I think, the new website coming up in beginning of October, so that should be cool. Soon. And then primemind.com for the app. Like, people should check that one out. It's
primemind.com.
Good. Yeah,
for the app, yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's a good
free app, or is it a?
Yeah, it's freemium. You can use it.
Sure.
Really important. Take time for it. This is really the main thing. Like, we've had, I mean, the feedback has been amazing. We have like 25,000 in-app feedbacks of like 4.9 out of 5 or something. It's like, you know, people have been, and the main thing is take the time for it. It's really like, if you have to close your eyes, it takes 10 minutes. You put in earplugs and you just lean back, and it's basically, the idea is it's mindset coaching for a specific situation. So it's not like meditation where you're like, there's no kind of reason. You know, it's kind of like, generally, okay, you're meditating, but what for?
Yeah.
And this is, okay, you have a job interview now, and you just want to perform better, right? And that's the idea of like why I use it for poker, is if it's something high stakes, right? If something is at risk, 5% matter.
Yeah.
Right. And this is it's not gonna be like, oh, I'm a completely new person, but I feel more in the zone. I feel fresher. I feel more confident. I feel like, you know, I can deliver.
Yeah.
And so you listen to it for a specific thing, and then it has an impact. So this is the idea behind it.
I like it, man. Well, I appreciate you being here. And Fedor, I want to acknowledge you for your brilliant mind and your ability to teach others how to master their mind as well. Because I think a lot of people are struggling with that anxiety, stress, fear, just confusion, and to share what you've learned on how to master something and give it to others is a great gift. So I want to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. The final question is, what is your definition of greatness?
Oh man, you're like, there's a lot of deep questions here. Greatness. I think I mean, the thing is really with greatness, I think it's so relative. It is really like this word itself, all these words are so relative, right? Like, we've been great at things years ago, and now it's like not even remotely close to being great, right? So I think, to me, greatness means that your goal is to become the best at something specific. You visualize it and you put everything you have towards that goal. And I think that is, to me, people that do that, and there's only like, I think everyone is lying to themselves when like a lot of people don't have that goal. B, nobody puts everything towards it. You know, it's like maybe a lot of them 80%,
Mm-hmm.
50, like most of them 50%. It's like, how do you, my goal is to become the greatest at this. And it's like, okay, how much time do you put into it? And it's like, like 40 hours. Why not 80? Right? Why not every minute you've got? It's like everything. I feel like even the holidays I took were towards, this goal. It's like even every minute I slept was like, okay, I was like, okay, just to be ready again to do this. Mm-hmm. There's like, if I played soccer, it was because I needed balance to like do this again, mm-hmm. right? So it's I feel like every single minute of my life was towards becoming the best at this. And I think that was not conscious, but I think it can be. I think if you want to be great at something, I think that's what you have to do. Mm-hmm. Put every single minute you've got into it.
Fedor, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.